The Chronologue. A conversation with Barbie, plastic skin, real questions. It opens in a decaying dreamhouse and slowly peels back the bright veneer to reveal something raw, self-aware, funny, and unsettling. There's something uncanny about silence when it's dressed in pink. The air is still. No birds, no breeze. Just the faint hum of memory clinging to faded vinyl siding and a glint of glitter that refuses to die. Jude Meridian arrived, not with the usual bang of temporal displacement or the flicker of interdimensional static, but quietly, like a thought someone had forgotten they once had. He stood in what might have once been a backyard, though it was hard to tell. Everything around him was bubblegum-hued and slightly melted, as if reality had gone through a hot cycle it was never designed to survive. A 3-story dream house loomed ahead of Jude, abandoned yet oddly pristine. Its plastic walls hadn't yellowed with time. The pool was dry, but the lounge chairs remained perfectly reclined, angled toward a sun that no longer rose in this place. The front door swung open slowly, not startled by his presence, but as if it had been expecting him all along.
Hello?
There was no reply, just the sound of Jude's boots clicking against linoleum floors printed with fake tile patterns. The house, this whole world, felt suggestive. Not real, but meticulously coded to feel familiar. Comforting, in the way a childhood memory feels after it's been photoshopped by a marketing team. And then he saw her. She sat cross-legged on a heart-shaped rug, painting her nails with no polish, just air, performing the gesture for no one in particular. Her hair was a little frizzy. She wore a sequined bomber jacket over pajamas that read, "I can be anything," in faded, exhausted type.
You're late.
I didn't know I was invited.
That's the thing about time travelers, you're always expected.
She didn't look at Jude right away. She kept blowing on her invisible nails like they were still wet. Every motion was deliberate, not to impress, but to assert indifference. She was performing non-performance, which, in 2025, was perhaps the most self-aware gesture of all. Jude glanced around. The place looked exactly as he remembered it, only off.
Yeah, well, welcome to the pink zone. Half nostalgia, half purgatory.
She patted the seat next to her, one of those molded plastic thrones that once screamed glamour, in a Target aisle. Jude sat down. The chair creaked under his weight. She didn't flinch.
So, Jude Meridian, time traveler, podcaster, existential midwife to fictional archetypes. What brings you to Barbie Land after dark?
Curiosity. And maybe the world forgot about you. I didn't want to.
Oh, honey, the world never forgets Barbie. They just put her in a box under the bed with the rest of their unresolved issues.
She grins, but it's not plastic. It's the kind of grin people wear when they've survived several cultural reboots and at least 3 nervous breakdowns.
Let me guess. You want to know what it was like being her, the it girl, the icon, the plastic messiah in kitten heels?
Only if you want to talk about it.
She sighs. Long, deep. The kind of sigh you don't usually hear from someone with molded abs.
You know what the worst part is? Everyone thinks I was invented to oppress women, that I was some misogynist plot from the Mad Men era. A toy built like a pinup, handed to little girls with a side of body dysmorphia.
Weren't you?
Yes, but also no, I was an idea, a joke, a weapon, a mirror, a dream. I was whatever the moment needed me to be. 1960s, I was glamour and domesticity. 1970s, feminist career gal. 1980s, power suits and aerobics. 1990s, suddenly I was a surgeon and a vet and dating Ken on my terms.
She stands, begins to pace like a TED Talk is brewing.
You want to know the truth, Jude? I never wanted to be real. Real is messy. Real has armpit hair and bad credit. I was aspirational. You didn't want to be me. You wanted to be the kind of person who could be me. Blonde, balanced, boob forward, but career-oriented, and always smiling.
And now?
Now I'm obsolete, a relic. My last reinvention came with a monologue about the female condition, delivered by an actress trying not to cry in mascara. That was my cultural swan song. After that, silence, a few memes, then nothing.
She walks over to a vanity that still smells like cotton candy trauma, stares at her reflection like it owes her money.
You know they made a Barbie for every job. I was a marine biologist before half the world could spell climate change. And yet, somehow, I'm still blamed for making girls hate their bodies. As if little boys didn't grow up playing with shredded commandos and billionaires who punch aliens. No one asked G.I. Joe why his waist was 28 inches.
You were the symbol. You took the hit.
And I took it well, didn't I?
She smiles again, but this time it's cracked, like she's testing the limits of her own irony.
I was supposed to be everything. That was the tagline. You can be anything, and you know what I realized?
What?
No one ever asked me what I wanted to be.
Silence. Not awkward, just dense. Like the air is waiting to catch up.
You know what I wanted to be, Jude?
No idea.
I wanted to be bored. I wanted to have a Tuesday, where nothing happens, no fashion emergency, no speech at the Women in Tech Awards, no surprise beach rescue, just a couch, some cereal, and a rerun.
You ever get that?
One time, 2004, the office ran out of new outfits. I sat in a storage bin for 6 months. It was heaven.
There's a pause. Then she laughs. A real one. Sharp and fizzy like soda pop that's been shaken too long.
God, remember when I ran for president?
You've done that more than once.
Exactly. That's how you know it didn't work.
She flops back onto the couch, one leg over the armrest, looking utterly undignified and happier for it.
They gave me everything but a soul, every job, every outfit, every ethnicity eventually, but not once did they give me a bad hair day. Not once did I cry in public or eat cake out of a pan at midnight. Do you know what that does to a woman?
Turns her into a symbol?
No, it turns her into a concept, and concepts don't bleed. They don't age, they don't live, they just pose.
Jude said nothing. The sunlight streaming through the windows was artificial, but the light on her face was not. She looked free, but also like someone who didn't quite know what to do with that freedom.
Do you want to see the attic?
What's up there?
Everything I used to be.
And with that, she rises again, this time slower, less theatrical. The Dreamhouse groans slightly as we ascend. Maybe it's tired too. Jude and Barbie ascend into the attic, a surreal reliquary of lost selves, cultural contradictions, and glitter-dusted ghosts. Humor and heartbreak twist together like pink licorice. The attic wasn't dusty. That would have implied decay. This was something else entirely, preservation. Like a crime scene held intact for forensic study. The floorboards were smooth, the air tinged with stale perfume and a faint trace of melted rubber. It was quiet, but not empty. 1,000 unblinking eyes stared at Jude from shelves, boxes, and glass cabinets. Barbies. Old ones. All of them.
Welcome to my resurrection closet.
She says it like a joke. Like it's funny to be confronted by your own corpse in 37 different outfits.
That's Day to Night Barbie, 1985. One twist of the hat, boom, secretary becomes CEO. Didn't even need an MBA, just Velcro and confidence.
She looks efficient.
She's dead inside. That was the Reagan era. Efficiency was the point.
They walked slowly. Each doll version of her was mounted like a tiny icon. Saint Surgeon, Saint Bride, Saint Disco Inferno. All of them wore the same fixed smile. Some came with careers, others with boyfriends, pets, or rocket ships.
There's Dr. Barbie. I gave medical advice before I was anatomically correct. Imagine telling kids to believe in themselves while lacking internal organs.
You ever resent them? The girls who played with you?
No, they were the only ones who saw me move.
They stopped in front of one Barbie encased in a yellowing box. Her skin tone was darker, her afro perfectly styled. The box read, Shawnee, Barbie's friend, in loud, patronizing font.
That's where we started pretending we were diverse. Barbie's black friend, not her equal, not her twin, just an accessory, like earrings but with opinions.
That changed eventually.
Yeah, but slowly, painfully, like pulling glitter out of carpet.
She opens a drawer. Inside, a pile of high heels, perfectly molded and identical, all left foot only.
They never made right feet. I had to learn to balance. You know how hard that is, walking through American culture in a circle, hoping no one notices your gait's a little ideological?
She laughs, then bites her lip.
You know what no one talks about? The Cold War, how I became part of it. They used me, Jude. Western femininity in a box. I was freedom wrapped in plastic. Meanwhile, Eastern Bloc kids got dolls that look like state-employed librarians with a hangover.
So you were propaganda.
Still am, baby, except now I sell empowerment. That's the hot product.
She led Jude to the far wall. Here, the tone shifted. A single shelf, dimly lit, held not dolls, but photographs. Barbie mid-breakdown. A factory misprint with 2 left eyes. A bootleg version from Mexico with her face painted on backward. One with no arms. One burned.
They called them defects. I call them truth.
These weren't released, were they?
No, but they existed. For a second they lived, and then someone decided they were wrong.
She sat cross-legged on the floor again, surrounded by her own reflections. The attic creaked above them, as if it were remembering too.
People think I'm stupid, like I don't know. They make jokes. Plastic bimbo. Airhead. Stepford wife. But I've read Judith Butler. I've watched documentaries. I've cried during Beyoncé's Lemonade.
What did you feel when the movie came out?
Relief and fury.
Why fury?
Because I finally got to say the things I'd wanted to say for 60 years. And it wasn't even my voice. It was hers, an actress, a writer, a director. And I'm glad, truly. But also, I was here, all along, waiting to speak.
She runs her hand along a row of vintage Barbies, whispering names like they're old friends. Totally Hair, Rockstar, Teen Talk.
I said, math class is tough. People lost their minds, burned me, boycotted me. But you know what? Math is tough. For a 7-year-old who's told she can't be both cute and clever, I wasn't mocking them. I was them.
Would you say you're angry?
No, just exhausted. Being a mirror is tiring, especially when everyone wants a different reflection.
There's a long pause. Then she perks up suddenly, as if remembering an old joke.
You know what they never let me be?
What?
Middle-aged. There's no menopause Barbie, no perimenopausal adventure playset with hot flashes and hormone creams, no empty nest Barbie who drinks Pinot and joins a book club that never reads anything.
Would you want that version?
I am that version.
And in that moment, she doesn't look 32 forever. She looks real. Still perfect, sure, but haunted by all the years she wasn't allowed to age.
I want laugh lines. I want chin hairs. I want to sit on a porch in a robe that smells like soup and yell at the neighbor kids.
That's very specific.
Exactly.
She pulls something from behind a crate, a box labeled Barbie 2020, Pandemic Edition. Inside, a face mask, a laptop, a sourdough starter.
That was my favorite. I didn't have to leave the house. I just sat around baking bread and doom scrolling.
You ever Google yourself?
Of course, I'm terrifying.
Her face shifts again. That strange Barbie magic, the way she can be charming, devastating, and surreal in the same breath.
You know what it's like to be searched more than most world leaders, to be ranked, rated, reviewed, to have your waistline debated by morning talk shows? I've been called a hero and a curse in the same paragraph.
Would you rather be forgotten?
No, I'd rather be misunderstood on my terms.
She lifts one of the broken dolls. Its face melted, its limbs askew.
This one was in a house fire. A little girl wrote to the company begging for a replacement. They sent her a new one, factory fresh. She wrote back, I wanted her, not a perfect one. Her.
That's beautiful.
That's real, and for a minute, so was I.
There's a sudden shift, a weight in the air, something deeper than nostalgia, almost sacred. We sit in silence again, surrounded by the selves she used to be, and maybe still is.
You know what scares me, Jude?
What?
That I was never a person, not even to myself, just a reflection of need, and when the world stopped needing me,
She trails off, doesn't finish, doesn't need to. This act shifts from memory to vulnerability as Barbie begins to speak more frankly. about desire, intelligence, and the myth of the perfectly composed woman. They descended from the attic slowly. The air grew warmer, the lighting softer, as if the house itself were trying to change the subject. Downstairs, everything felt a little closer to real life, though still tinged with that trademark pastel surrealism. A couch that was too pink, a fridge that was unmistakably fake, the illusion always just one corner away from collapse. Barbie walks barefoot across the laminate floor, trailing one hand along the wall.
Did you know I've never had genitals?
I'd heard.
Everyone thinks it's funny, but it wasn't. It was confusing.
She turned to Jude, suddenly sharper, like the light had caught her at just the right angle to reveal the cracks.
Imagine being a global sex symbol and a virgin by design, not even by choice, just smooth, anatomically censored for your protection.
That sounds lonely.
It was worse than lonely. It was numb.
She plops onto a beanbag chair shaped like a lip gloss tube. The image is absurd. So is the pain behind her eyes.
They wanted me to be sexy, but not sexual, desirable, but not desiring. You know what that does to a person, to a concept?
Split you in two?
Into 44. Every year they gave me a new body, new face, new voice, but always, always no wants of my own. No pleasure. Just presentation.
She reaches behind a cushion and pulls out a diary. It's thick, worn, gold-edged. The lock is broken.
I used to pretend I was in love, wrote poems, little notes, some to Ken, most not.
Anyone real?
No, that was the tragedy. I wasn't allowed to imagine anyone real, not even myself.
She flips through the diary, letting pages flutter like memories escaping.
One time I wrote about having sex on the beach. It was awkward and funny and sweet, and then I shredded it because that version of me didn't sell well.
You ever want that? A real partner?
Yes, but not the way they wrote it, not some tuxedoed accessory with abs and a Malibu tan. I wanted someone to sit in silence with, someone to ask me questions I didn't have answers to.
She pauses.
Someone like you, maybe.
It landed in the air like perfume. Gentle, potent, unresolvable. Jude didn't speak. He didn't move. The silence for once felt sacred.
They always imagined me smart enough to be a teacher or a vet, never a philosopher, never an engineer working on AI ethics or cosmology.
Why not?
Because ambition in women is only cute until it threatens the audience.
She moves to a nearby shelf and pulls down a small trophy. Best Role Model 1992. The gold paint is chipped.
You know what my SAT score was?
You took the SAT?
No, but I dreamed I did. 1600, verbal perfection. I wanted to major in epistemology. I wanted to argue with professors and write footnotes and drink lukewarm coffee in sad campus libraries.
She sets the trophy down, then kneels beside it like she's in mourning.
But I was too busy smiling, always smiling. I smiled through recessions, wars, impeachments, climate collapse. I smiled when Ken left me. I smiled when they made me a game show host and forgot to give me a mic.
What would you study now, if you could?
Entropy. I want to understand why everything falls apart and why that's okay.
She's laughing now, dry and defiant.
You know how many people asked me about politics? None. Not once. Even when I was running for office, they asked about my outfit. Can you imagine how powerful I could have been with a platform and an internet connection?
What would your platform be?
Decency and glitter, maybe free universal therapy, and a return to handwritten letters.
Jude looked around. The house felt more lived in now. Less like a set, more like a sanctuary. A place where contradictions had finally been allowed to sit down and exhale.
You ever think about why we value women who don't ask for anything?
All the time.
That's why I stayed smooth. Easier that way. No questions, no hunger, just shine.
She looks at Jude, serious now.
But I do hunger, Jude. I hunger for late night conversations. I hunger for books I was never allowed to read. I hunger for touch, for irrelevance, for complexity, for chaos.
That sounds a lot like living.
I know. I Googled it.
They both laughed. The real kind, not the performative sitcom version. Hers was raspy. His was tight in the chest. Something in Jude ached for her. This woman who was everything and nothing, who had never been given the chance to simply exist.
Want to see my garden?
You have a garden?
Of course not, but let's go pretend.
They stepped into her imagined garden, a metaphorical space where past limitations fell away and new desires began to take root. They exited through a back door that stuck a little, as if it hadn't been opened in years. Outside, the sunlight was almost real. A sky-blue sky hung overhead, accompanied by chirping birds from some unseen speaker. The grass was synthetic but soft, and flowers had been painted onto the fence in looping, childish brushstrokes. At the center of it all sat a square patch of soil, real dirt, uneven, messy, glorious.
I made this, dug it out myself, took forever.
Barbie kneels beside the garden bed, her hands already dirty. Her nails are chipped. There's something almost rebellious about it.
I planted tomatoes. They died. I planted lavender. It laughed in my face, so now I plant weeds. We get along fine.
They don't ask for much.
Exactly. They just are. No performance, no branding. Just chaotic, stubborn life.
She pulls a dandelion from the soil and twirls it like a baton.
I used to think the future was a straight line. First, you're a ballerina, then a pilot, then a president, then retired in a pink RV. But that was marketing. The real future's a question mark in glitter ink.
What do you want it to look like?
Quiet, messy, full of wrong turns.
She gestures around the fake garden with both arms like a sorceress conjuring a spell.
I want to live in a house that creaks with books stacked everywhere. I want to mispronounce French words and not be corrected. I want to wear socks that don't match. I want to forget what day it is and not apologize.
You could do that now.
Maybe, but it's hard, when your entire existence has been tied to being seen, to being polished. It's like trying to stop posing mid-photo.
She walks to the fence, traces her finger along a hand-painted sunflower that leans a little too far left.
I think I want to teach philosophy, maybe, or ethics, something that lets me ask questions instead of answering them.
What would you teach first?
That perfection is a form of violence.
She says it so simply, like it's obvious, like we've all known, but we're afraid to say it out loud.
We spend so much time smoothing ourselves down, editing, filtering, smiling through disaster. Perfection looks like success, but inside, it's hollow. It doesn't bend with the world.
And you're ready to bend?
I want to break, just a little, just enough to let the light in.
She crouches again, presses her palm into the soil. Jude does the same. It feels warm.
Do you think people could love me like this?
Like what?
Unfinished.
I think that's the only way anyone's ever really loved anything.
A wind picks up. The fake birds glitch for a moment. One chirps 3 times in a row, identical. They both smile.
I sometimes wonder if I'm the dream or the dreamer.
What's the difference?
The dream gets chosen. The dreamer chooses.
She sits cross-legged in the grass, eyes closed, not posing, not performing, just breathing.
You ever get tired of traveling?
Sometimes, but every place teaches me something.
What did I teach you?
That silence can be revolutionary. That softness can survive anything. That even icons deserve to fall apart and be rebuilt.
She opens her eyes. They're wet but proud.
For the longest time, I thought my whole job was to inspire little girls.
And now?
Now I think I just want to disappoint someone, spectacularly, publicly, unapologetically, and still be loved afterward.
There was a pause, a long one. Then they both burst into laughter.
God, imagine the scandal. Barbie bombs a TED Talk, eats pancakes in a bathrobe, and refuses to explain herself.
Front page news.
I'd frame it.
She lay back in the grass, arms spread wide like she was making an angel in a field that didn't exist. Jude sat beside her, and together they stared up at the fake blue sky, a sky that somehow felt more honest than the real one ever had.
You think people like me go to heaven?
I think you've been there. You just made it too shiny for anyone to stay long.
You're good, Jude.
Just listening.
That's what makes you dangerous.
She sits up, plucks a weed, tucks it behind her ear like a tiara. Her crown of resistance, her coronation of imperfection.
Ask me something scary.
Okay, if you could become real right now, just human, no more fame, no more plastic, would you do it?
Yes, but only if I could forget who I was.
Why?
Because that's the only way to start over without shame.
This closing passage brings the conversation back indoors, into a place between memory and meaning, and ends with a quiet, philosophical note of both longing and release. They go back inside. The fake sun dimmed. The birdsong faded into a single gentle tone, like a heartbeat slowing. The Dreamhouse felt quieter now, less like a toy, more like a chapel. The plastic no longer shone. Or maybe Jude had simply stopped needing it to. Barbie walks ahead of Jude, barefoot, silent. Her glitter bomber jacket hangs open now, revealing a faded t-shirt that reads, "Property of no one." She moves like someone returning to herself.
I used to dream of applause. Now I dream of a locked room, a pen, and an unsent letter.
She sits on a couch that's been here since 1973. Velvet, burnt orange, unironically beautiful. Jude sits too.
You know what I envy most about humans?
What?
Your ability to forget.
She leans back, stares at the ceiling like it might open into some other sky.
You forget names, faces, whole summers. You lose entire decades in shoeboxes. I remember everything, every slogan, every photo shoot, every time a little girl chopped off my hair and left me naked in a sandbox. I remember all of it.
That sounds unbearable.
It was for a while. Then it became a kind of religion.
She pulls a small record player from under the coffee table, puts on a scratched LP. The needle drops. Static then. Soft jazz. Something lonely. Something old.
Do you think stories can die if no one tells them?
Yes, but sometimes they're better off that way.
Why?
Because we need room to make new ones.
She nods, slowly, like she's known that, but needed someone else to say it out loud. Sometimes I wonder if I was ever meant to last this long. Maybe I was supposed to disappear in the 80s, like cassette tapes and hope.
Would that have been easier?
Probably, but then again, I wouldn't have met you.
There's that silence again. That real one. Not scripted. Not paused for commercial break. Just the kind that lets things settle.
Can I tell you a secret?
Always.
I don't want to be brave anymore. I just want to be held. Not because I'm strong, not because I'm iconic, but because I'm here. Because I existed. Because I was someone, even if I was made in a factory.
She leans forward, elbows on knees, eyes like faded neon.
Sometimes I lie in bed and imagine my body aging. Not in fear, just curiosity. Wrinkles forming, knees aching, skin loosening around a life well lived. I don't want to stay shiny forever. That's not beauty. That's taxidermy.
And what is beauty?
Uncertainty, bruises that turn gold, hands that shake but still reach out, things that fade without asking permission.
Jude wanted to tell her she was right. More than right, but he didn't. He just sat with her, the way she'd asked.
There's one more thing I want.
Tell me.
I want to stop being a metaphor for gender, for consumerism, for America, for anything. I want to be just a woman, one who sometimes eats too fast and regrets it, one who cries during dumb commercials, one who thinks too much about the moon and not enough about her taxes.
The record ends. Just a soft pop now, repeating forever.
You'll leave soon,
I always do.
and I'll stay here, in this half-real house, with my weeds and my ghosts and my unsold dreams.
Maybe. Or maybe one day you'll walk out of here and no one will recognize you, and that'll be the best thing that ever happened.
She smiles, not wide, not toothy, just enough.
If you could send a message to someone in my time, someone who still believes I'm perfect, who still holds me like a promise, what would you say?
I'd say, let her fall apart. Let her make mistakes. Let her be too much, too loud, too lost. Let her ruin her eyeliner and lose her keys and disappoint someone important. Let her be real, even if she never was.
Barbie breathes in and exhales like it's the first time.
That's actually pretty good advice.
It's advice I wish more of us could take.
Maybe I will. Maybe tomorrow I'll leave the dream house for good, walk barefoot into the world and forget my catchphrases. Maybe I'll dye my hair black and take up pottery.
Do you think you will?
Ask me again in another 60 years.
The room began to fade, not because it was ending, but because Jude was. And somewhere in a quiet pink house that isn't real, a woman sits cross-legged on the floor, no longer smiling for anyone but herself.